Howdy, people. Give a few minutes for folks to join in here. So today I thought I'd just show you the project that I've started building. It's called a Fisgard Skiff. This is a boat that's nominally my own design. It is actually designed, or rather, I adapted a Howard Chappell design to this particular boat. Let's do a little walk around here. So I've been steaming some planks on the lathe yesterday, so we'll talk about that in just a moment. But in general, this is a 12-foot boat, flat bottomed. Actually, I've got a little model of it right here. It might be even easier to see it than the full-size thing. So there we go. And Howard Chappell designed this as, I think it's an 8-foot wheelbarrow boat. So there'd be like a big old wheel built up into the bow section. I don't have the lines drawing handy. I should have thought to do that, but I don't. So anyway, I received a commission. Oh my gosh, when was it? 2010. Wow. So 13 years ago, received a commission from Parks Canada to build a skiff for the Fisgard Historic Lighthouse. So that's Canada's. I think it's the oldest lighthouse on the Pacific coast, and it's like 1850 or something. I don't remember the exact date of the lighthouse, but it's a pretty cool structure. So it's here in Victoria, attached to one of our oldest military bases. It's an old a fort called Fort Rod Hill. And so they did a restoration on the lighthouse, and they wanted to tell the story about the lighthouse keeper, one of the lighthouse keepers, and he died. He disappeared one day, and they just found his rowboat washed up on shore, just one oar in it. And so they wanted to sort of tell that story, and they wanted a boat for that. So they had sent me plans for wooden boats. Lumberyard skiff, which is a really simple 2-plank boat. It was a supplement wooden boat magazine put out called Getting Started in Wooden Boat Building. And so I thought it didn't feel like it was the most appropriate design for this particular application. So I just suggested, let me do something that's a little more interesting. And I thought a flat bottom boat was a good choice in terms of this boat the lighthouse keeper didn't really need to go very far. I can't remember if the lighthouse, now it has a causeway to get onto it. It could be at the time you needed to row out to it. But I thought sort of a simple flat bottom boat might have been reasonably representative of what he might have. And I thought, let's build something that might look like somebody with average carpentry skills might have built. And so I decided on this 2-plank variation. I think Chappell's is 2-plank as well, if I'm not mistaken. But I also made some really simple design choices, like instead of doing typical quarter knees and breast hook, I did just sort of like a flat deck right across the top of the shear and a flat deck across the back, so that they're just connected with the cross planks. Anyhow, I love building flat bottom boats. I think they're really kind of interesting. Morning, Bob. Morning, Matt. I find them interesting because of the simplicity of them. It means that you've got to be kind of picky about the details to make it look good. I like the process of cross-planking the bottom, although this particular one, we won't be doing that. We're going to be doing a composite bottom on this, which is kind of a pain in the ass, to be honest. But it's essentially going to be a plywood bottom, glassed over on the outside, but on the inside we are going to be putting a layer of solid wood. And the reason for this is because the customer just wants dead simple maintenance. So I didn't want to give him a bottom where he had to worry about caulking seams to maintain or anything like that. And he wanted to be able to do do a little bit of beach camping, so bringing the boat up on beaches. And around here, beaches are typically pretty barnacly, lots of oyster shells. They're rough. I don't have that many smooth sandy beaches at all. So I wanted something that had some toughness to it. And then from the maintenance point of view, he wants to just use an oil finish on the inside. And so that means that we want a surface that can take an oil finish and have some durability to it at the same time. So that's hence the solid wood layer on the inside of the bottom. So we're just going to be, I got several choices there. I could have cross-planked it and then just put a thin layer of plywood over top. And that was kind of plan A, but I backed off on that and I decided I'm going to just do like a 1/4 inch of yellow cedar planking on the inside, cross-planked, with 3/8 plywood on top of that, and then glass on top of that. Now, because it's only 1/4 inch thick solid wood, I basically got to make a bottom and then glue up that solid wood onto the bottom and then put it onto the boat. So that's where it gets to be a bit of a pain in the ass. It should be nice if I had vacuum bagging capability to facilitate that, but I don't. So we'll come up with some simple solution for planking, for clamping those planks in place. They're going to be about 3 inches wide. So in the process of building flat bottom boats, we start with a mold like in any case, but we don't have a keel per se to build on. The thing that becomes our keel in a flat bottom boat are chines. So chines are the structural elements that connect the stem to the transom, and it's nominally a 1x2 of some description. So I think we're gonna be pulling this plank off here so we can talk a little bit about the chines. Let's see if I can set the camera up here where it makes sense. It's a bit hard to see, and of course if I put it too far away then the mic loses its capability. But chines can be kind of tricky to put on. Let's see if I can, what can we do here to make this easier to see? All right, let's talk about chines back here at the stern here first. If you have questions, by all means, say something. Not too many comments so far, but that's fine. I'm terrible at taking a look at those comments, as you know. Mostly because even with glasses on, everything's a blur at the moment. I'm a couple of feet away. All right. So before I start pulling this plank off, actually, let's talk about a couple of the details I've used to facilitate planking. So one of them is, this is something I use a lot, are these buttons to hold down the edges of planks. Now in this case, I've only used them at the bow and the stern, but where the transom is, you can't clamp very easily. You got to clamp all the way across the transom in order to get it to hang on. So a button is a really nice little simple solution there. Why it's hard to see what I'm holding. So we custom make those to fit the scenario. And then there's a few spots where I've got blocking attached to the molds. You see right here and here. And that's to make it easier to reposition planking as I'm taking it on, putting it on and taking it off. So when I start out, before the plank is even steamed in place, I've used a batten to lay it where I want the plank, added that blocking, and then that means when this plank comes out of the steam box, I'm not fussing around trying to figure out exactly where it's going to go. I just need to worry about getting one end clamped in place, bend it around, and it just has to touch down on these blocks. And that means that I save a lot of time in getting it into place quickly without fussing. So while this is still set up, we'll just also take a look at the clamping affair here at the bow. So just a simple, hold on a sec. Let me turn the camera around here so I can see what you're seeing. Okay. Come on. Ah, man, I tell you, I'm terrible at these live stream things. Okay, so just using this 1x or not half, this just chunk of dunnage that's lying around here as a clamping caul. That's really helpful. Just tie it off to this screw here, so so I don't have to worry about getting a clamp on up here where it's really hard to get a clamp. This one has been added later in the process, so really all I needed to do was get this plank sitting on the first block, for instance. I'll have the tail end swung out like I've prepared for it, where the tail end's going to land ahead of time when it's in straight configuration, and it was up here on the bandsaw, so I put a piece of blocking on here to get it at the right height in order for the bow to be at the right height. Swing this thing into place, throw a clamp on real quick, and then that's all I need to get the ball rolling. All right, and then we start bending it around and throwing some clamps on as I go. But mostly you want to just try and get it bent all the way around as quickly as possible. And then even back here, I don't have a button ready to go right away. I'll just use, I've got a piece of rope that I'll tie off to get it tightened across there, throw a clamp on up here, and that sort of sets the stage for getting that plank on in quickly and efficiently. Now, my steam box that I was using, you can see it here on the floor, is pretty short. It's only like 6 feet long. And that's just the one I happened to have on hand that was wide enough for this 12-inch wide plank, which means that I was steaming the hood end or the bow end in the box, but it only covers me, about halfway up the boat, and the rest is still cold. Now, I could bend this on cold in the first place, so I wasn't too worried about that, but I do want to give it some steam. So after the bow's in place, I came back. This bag was already placed on the stern end, and so I moved the steamer back here, and I would, start steaming in the middle here, give it about half an hour steaming in the bag, then move the steamer back and a couple more spots and steam it for another half hour back there. And that's only because the steam can't travel very far in the bag before it just kind of peters out, either through leaks or just distance from the steam box. It just gets cool. So anyway, that's the process I use for working without a full-length steam box. Come on. Let's go. Oh yeah, let's before I disappear, a little innovation. Let me undo this. So pull this clamp off over here. This wedge is just to tighten up on this lashing because it's otherwise loose. So here's the innovation I came up with, are these little wedges, but flip around. But I've used my 1/4-inch crown stapler to just have a couple little prongs sticking out. Now these are doubled up because I needed a greater angle, and I just quickly rough cut those. But on the other side here, so we've got a finished plank. There's only about a 1/4 inch of extra planking protruding past the stem. So here I've just grabbed a wedge, and I was able to tack it in. You can see the holes there, just up at the, beyond where it's going to get trimmed back. So that was a really nice little system. I've never done that before. That just kind of popped into my head to anchor that in place. All right. Let me undo that bow. got a little hook, my hanging hook. This is fighting me. This was sort of a hook to sort of control the bow end while I was messing around at the back. Now it's preventing me from getting anywhere, so I'm going to swing that out of the way. There we go. Here you can see how much shape got left in the plank after that steam. Like that looks fairly straight, but if you look back where it's starting the curve, it's coming in really quite easily. This is fairly heavy planking. This is 5/8 thick. I figured I can give it some robustness. All right. Come on. It's where you wish you had another person hanging around helping you with the camera work. Now, I'll often make these buttons with the inside rounded off so that you can swing them into place and they still present a positive downward stop. I didn't bother doing that on these ones. I was just working quickly. But when I've got a boat that's got a whole bunch of planks to install, I'll take the time to make a little more elaborate button that I'll use over and over again. This is a 2-plank boat, so it really doesn't make much sense to put a lot of time into stuff like that. Okay, now here where pressure is released except for at one clamp, so you can see how much shape we've got on there from that steaming. Let's pull it off. Yeah, look at that. It's quite a banana. Try to be careful not to beat it up. It's not something I'm good at. No. Okay, I'll put it over on the bench. Yeah, look at the wind. Look at the wind on that thing. Cool. All right, now there's flats on, as you can see. Not my preference. I mean, I'd much prefer this to be vertical grain or 3/4, but this is all I could get. Even here in the Pacific Northwest, where we got the best wood going for boat building, your sawyer doesn't always have what you're looking for. And that was the case when I was down there. I had very few planks to pick and choose from. So I had to go with this flat sawn one to get the right width combined with length. Anyway, chines. We were talking about, this all started talking about chines. Chines are the backbone of your flat bottom skiff. So back here, this chine joint, which looks very simple. It is actually very simple, but it can be very confusing to lay out and cut. So maybe I'll try and figure out a way to demonstrate that for us here. If you got a really deep transom, you could probably get away with fastening through the side of the chine, which is nice, but there's just not enough meat in this joint here to facilitate a screw going through effectively, in my opinion. So I chose to come in from the end, and given how much strain was in this in the vertical orientation as well as the horizontal, I kind of feel like this was the best choice to I'll run screws in here that pin that end in, and then facilitate the bend. So you start the bend at the back, because there's a fair bit of strain. These are fairly deep chines. They're fairly hefty, so it's like almost 2 inches wide. Well, it is 2 inches wide across the face. It's a parallelogram, and it's like 7/8 thick. So I probably could have gone lighter, but I like this. This boat feels like it needs to be robust. So in bending these chines, I set up some blocking like this, clamped to the transom, either inside or outside, doesn't matter which. I think I did it on the inside. And that's because you start the bend at the transom. So with that chine pocket pre-cut and the end of that chine nominally fitted into place, hopefully it's a good fit, but it's hard to judge when it's not bent yet. And this little U-joint, or this U-block on there, that's to take the strain of the bend. You get her in the steamer, pop that in there, and then you start bending away. Now, you'll notice I've got these little keeper blocks here. That's because by the time you get around to here, this chine wants to keep rising, because this boat shape flattens out across the bottom here. The rocker up the bottom has got a lot of rocker right in through here, and then suddenly it flattens out through here. And if you don't have these keepers, it's gonna just pop right up, and then it'll probably pop up maybe even a couple of inches. You wrap that around, and then at the bow, I just run the chine proud. So here's one of the offcuts. I guess the offcut from the other side. Yeah, so this would have been sitting proud here. So after that's steamed into place, you got some fitting you can do. So back at the stern, we check the fit. We check this fit right here, and if anything is going to be out, it's probably the angle of this face, because it's hard to judge exactly what it should be. And there's a trick for figuring that out. I'll show you in a moment, but you might find yourself having to kerf this a couple times to get it just so. And in this particular case, these chines were rising up above the transom by about 1/4 inch. I wasn't worried about that. I was just mostly concerned about making sure that this corner landed in the right spot, and I was just going to plane this down anyway to match the transom, so that extra height was no issue. And then back at the bow, now we've got this thing running proud, get it clamped into place, and you just want to give it some time to kind of cool off. And once you're ready to do the final fitting, you got to figure out how to do this joint. So imagine this thing's standing proud, right? Well, you've got to figure out this angle, and it's not, you can't just take an angle off of the side of this and expect it to be right, because the attitude is different. If you imagine it's coming off, so let's eyeball down that chine. Just imagine it's springing out to here. There's a degree or two of difference in angle between this clamped in place, this temporarily clamped in place position, and the final position. And the way we figure that out is using battens, springing a batten along what will be the outside face, touching it off where you want the inside corner, and then springing that batten out to the outside of your chine to mark your cutoff point. And that same batten you'll use to get an accurate angle in here. And then this angle this way is kind of whatever the rake of your stem is relative to the chine. So that one's straightforward. And then it's just a question of connecting the dots and whoosh, sawing it through. So I've got some video of doing all of that. I'm going to try and put together a video about fitting chines. Likewise, getting this angle back here is the simplest way to do it is you just spring a temporary batten right over top of your molds, touch the transom off, and measure the angle off that batten to what this ought to be. So one of the, one moment, I'm going to grab a book. You guys can just stare at the boat for a second. Okay, so this book is the one that sort of guided me through my first flat bottom boat build. Richard Colin is the author, and the Heidi Skiff it's a really nice design that actually is this picture doesn't show it off very well. It's actually pretty cool looking boat with a real, there's a profile picture. It's got a really slick kind of Scandinavian-like profile. It's quite fun to build. And so a lot of the techniques he uses here is what I'm using still in this one. And one of those techniques involves using straight edges on some of your planks. So on the garboard here, it's hung on the boat. It's cut to follow the chines, but then the top edge is dead straight. And then the next plank starts out with one dead straight edge of the plank that lays over top of the lower one. And then the top is cut to a shape, desired shape. The next one, the bottom is cut to that same desired shape, and then the top edge is dead straight again. So it's sort of a speedy method of designing a boat. So I'm using a similar technique here in that if you look at my plank here, look at that edge that's on the bench. It's dead straight all the way through. So that's by design. And so the next plank is going to be dead straight along that same edge, and then the top, the shear is going to be cut to my desired shape. So that worked out pretty good in the first model, at least I think it did. If you look at this model, it looks like there's a big hook to this shear, but I'm pretty sure when I did the model, I actually laid a straight edged piece of stock against that to lay out that plank shape. But anyhow, this one might differ from the last one by some measure, and that's fine. Anyhow, this is this book here. I found it quite good in many ways. What I don't like about it is it did not have like a proper full measured drawing of the finished boat. It's all just sort of drawings of parts. Walks you through the process well enough. I don't love the illustrations, but I suppose they're mostly clear enough. But on the subject of the chines, let me see if we can scoot. You'll see how I made some copious notes. Yeah. So on the subject of cutting this chine, this was very confusing for me to follow, trying to understand what he's doing. And I made a bunch of notes saying, indicating where these drawings don't quite tell the correct story. But for the most part, that's not only exactly what the chine notch looks like, but everything looks wonky, right? But once you figure out the layout, which is really quite simple, and the cutting, which is just two dead straight cuts at the right angles, it's easy. And the angles are not hard to figure out because you've probably seen a lot of my other videos where I talk about cutting compound angles. And a compound angle, to cut it, is really a question of, let's look at this angle for a moment here. Now, as I'm going to move the camera across, imagine that the camera lens is your eye and is also your saw. So as we move it across, and you'll see, boom, right there, that's a straight line. It's a compound angle, but if you can orient yourself to all you're seeing is a straight line, then that's where you're cutting. You're just starting at the corner, starting slowly so that you can adjust your saw before it gets buried in there and locked in on its course. And once you get that technique figured out in your head, it's mostly psychological. When you can get that figured out in your head, you can cut any compound angle with ease. Oh, so Matt took a course with Richard. Yeah, he's an interesting guy. I've only met him once. Likewise, this angle on the inside, it's the same thing, straight cut. So over on Camano Island here on the Pacific coast, it's in Washington. There's the Center for Wooden Boats has got a little outpost called Kama Beach. It's a national park, and it's an old fishing resort that's got these cool little cabins, and they've used Heidi skiffs as some of their livery boats. So they got a bunch of Heidi skiffs, and I think the design here is 12 foot, which is okay, but it's not great for two people. It's a bit too short for two people to row comfortably, because the bow seat is just a bit too close to the bow for comfortable rowing. And if you try and row with somebody in the center, with the oarsman in the center and someone sitting in the stern sheets, it's just riding stern heavy. It's not a good setup. So Richard came up with a 14-foot version, which apparently handles much better. And at Kama Beach, they've also now got a bunch of boats. There were original boats in the livery that were all piled up in a warehouse somewhere, or a barn, that they've pulled out. I think they've probably restored a couple of them, and they're like an interesting sort of outboard skiff. I think they're a slight V-bottom skiff. Anyway, I'd love to build one of those someday. Kama Beach is it's a great place to visit, and there's little cabins you can rent. There's no shitters in the cabins. There's like just a common a bathroom building, but each of the cabins has got a little cooking area. So let's see. Anybody got some questions? Bob, Matt? No? Okay. All right. Let's talk a little bit, I guess, about planking, flat sawn planking. So, of course, this is a bit dodgy. There's a chance that I might end up with a crack down this plank. Probably if it'll happen anywhere, they call this cathedral grain here. You see these lines? It'll probably happen through there, because that's usually where cracks will generate, right through the heart of the tree. By tradition, we orient the outside of the tree to the inside of the boat. So the inside of the tree is to the outside of the boat. And part of that is because of the cupping of planks. Trees will cup to the outside. So that means as it dries, this will want to go that way, and the corners will want to go that way. So it'll help keep those corners pinned down where the joints are going to be, because we don't want those opening up, obviously. And in theory, it should be easier to hold that center portion down from cupping, because the fasteners have got lots of bearing there. That's one theory. I suppose you could make the argument it's equally easy to hold the corners down and leave the center to be compressed against its backing. So hopefully that won't happen. Now, to mitigate that, this planking is not dead dry, but this boat's going to live in the water. I kind of steam them a bit hard, and that's to try and drive out moisture that's in there. Steaming is counterintuitive. You'd think it gets the plank wet, and it does temporarily, but it really kind of boils the water out of the plank through the steaming process, and so it kind of seasons your plank. It's a bit like kiln drying your plank. So wet kiln drying, you could say. And so that's going a little bit heavier on the steam is going to help to stabilize those in terms of the moisture content inside. I don't want it super dry, because it's going to live in the water. I don't want it to hit the water and then suddenly expand and cause buckling on the planks. And a good example of that, if you follow Acorn to Arabella, Steve just posted a video showing what his boat looks like for its first haul out after 6 months, and all the oak planking he used below the waterline is swollen up and squeezed all the paying compound out of his seams. Oak moves a lot and is not necessarily considered the best material for below the water usage, although it gets used a lot. But it's something to be wary of. If you're ever working with oak, you want the moisture content to be a little bit up there if it's going to live in the water. Now, if I did get a crack in here, I've got a fix for it, and that is I take a router with a guide batten, and I will route a channel right over the crack. and then glue in a spline. And I'll usually just go like half or 3/4 of the way through the plank, leave the crack on the inside alone, and that's so that I've got a backing to fit a batten in. And I'll just glue a batten in, red cedar, and I'll usually orient the grain of the cedar so it's vertical grain going out ways, so it's not going to swell up and try and open that crack up. It's going to sort of be like it'll shrink and swell this way and hopefully be a stabilizing element. And of course, if you can use flexible adhesive in that, that's probably best, but more often than not, we use epoxy in there. In this flat bottom boat building process, once the chines are on, we usually move right onto the garboards. We want to get those on. We don't bother trying to deal with the corner before the plank is fastened in place. And once it is, then I will come back and I will fare off this corner and fare the top of the chine right across to the other side, so we get a dead flat plane. So when I'm cutting the bevels on these chines, if we look, here's the scrap here, one side, that's the inside. I pick whatever angle. I'll find the frame that kicks out the most, and I'll pick an angle for this that allows a little bit of water to shed off, so it gets like, I don't know, 5 or 10 degrees, hopefully, of shedding ability. And that'll be my constant chine angle for what will be on the top of the chine. And then the bottom one here, I think I usually pick whatever frame has got the greatest angle here too, and so that everything's oriented so that this corner ends up on the outside corner in terms of the design of the boat where the chine needs to land, meaning that there's a whole bunch of this edge that's going to get planed off once you're done. So it's not, you don't have to get all wound up. You could make this whole thing square. You just have more work to do. You could make it square and you could orient this corner to be the finished height. But I do it the opposite way. But either way works, you know. Once those are planed off, we can cross plank the bottom or plywood the bottom or whatever. This is going to come out. I could leave it in. You notice I've blocked up this guy. No, I can't leave it in. No, this has to come out. Initially I thought I don't remember what the hell I was going to do. I've set this lower than I usually do because I had one idea and then I changed my idea. Oh, I know what I was going to do. I was going to put temporary stringers in on top of these molds so that I could cross plank with lighter planking. But I decided to go down to that 1/4 inch layer on the bottom instead of something heavier. So now it doesn't make any sense to try and cross plank with 1/4 inch material. It's too light. And then you've got a choice here as to whether to finish the planking off and then move on to the bottom, or do the bottom now and then finish the planking off. I might just, I don't know what I want to do. I might finish off the planking because it's going to get riveted along here, and by having the bottom off, I can reach inside pretty easily and for peening those rivets, or I can just tack it and then flip the boat over and fasten it afterwards. I haven't decided on that. As usual, there's too many options, and because I don't do the same thing over and over again in the same way, I mean, I don't have the opportunity to build the same boat twice, 2, 3, 4 times in a row, and so the method I use for doing everything changes. And so I'm always trying new things, which I guess is good. Hello, Duncan. And but at the same time, it means that I don't get a bog standard way of doing anything. Okay, so to that end, here, this is a new scarfing jig I just put together. Now, I stole this idea from Dan Lee Boatbuilding. He's got a great YouTube channel building a boat called the Temptress, doing it in the scale model form, which I highly support that idea. And so this is real simple. It allows you to use your circular saw. Let me see if I can put the camera down here somewhere so you can see what's going on. Nope, not there, not there. Damn it. All right, let's try it over here. Good enough. All right. So of course you would have your plywood laying across the top here. You'd have some sort of clamping caul, clamping it down as close to the edge as you can without interfering with the scarf. And then you have a circular saw set up, and it's just set square, and you just run that saw right across there. And so this jig is set up with a prescribed scarf ratio. In this case, I've gone with 6:1. It's the bare minimum scarf ratio, which I would normally just use with plywood, and that's all this is intended to be scarfing for. If I go longer, which I could do, the thing is I've got a limited range on the circular saw blade, so the longer I go, the more I end up with just a big step that I have to plane out on the plywood, depending on the thickness of the plywood. So it looks like this should just allow me to pull off a scarf on 3/8 thick plywood without a step, which is exactly the thickness of the bottom here. So that should serve me well. And I made it 8 foot long, not for any other reason than it will allow me to potentially scarf planks lengthwise. So if I want to do, if I got a boat that's greater than 4 feet wide, I can do a lengthwise scarf on plywood if I have to. I think I've only ever done that once, but I can always chop this thing down if it's a burden. But I thought, what the hell, let's try doing that. And I realize now the one thing I didn't do is I put this blocking on the end to stabilize this angle. I think I need to cut that out to allow a clamp to be able to get in here and clamp down on the clamping caul that we need to have in place. So of course the trick to scarfing plywood is the plywood needs to be really flat, or else you're gonna have a wonky scarf. And with the light plywood, it's not that dead flat. Usually you gotta really try and pin it down. Anyhow, so I'm looking forward to trying that out. As you know, I've done scarves so many different ways. Just freehand it, using router jigs. I did that on the Catalina Wary for one project, somewhere back here in the pile. Yeah, got a router jig. I think I used it twice. Probably never use it again. But anyhow, let's see, what's one more thing? Yeah, okay, another thing I wanted to talk about quickly, clamps for lapstrake building. So let me flip this around so I can see what you're seeing. Get my face back in here again. There we go, how's it going? All right, so this has been my standard clamp for most lapstrake construction. A cam clamp, F-body style. I like these because I can, it gives me a large range of things that I can grab with it. So if I have to grab the inside of a mold, I can do that. If I just need to grab planks, I can do that easily. And these have just enough bite that you can, they'll hold things in place, but allow a little bit of wiggle room, which I find is helpful. The other thing I use sometimes, just with traditional construction, are clinker pins. It's basically a big clothespin. I won't bother digging it out, but there's not much to it. Just basically like a 2x2 with a big throat cut out of the middle of it, and I've actually, the tips are touching, but I've actually steamed mine down so that one of the tips is you get sort of a flat spot where the two touch, so that we don't have a sharp corner chewing up the planks. So there's sort of a soft touchdown. It works pretty good too. But this one of my viewers, Steve Lewis, sent me a whole bunch of these clamps. So he's made up these cam clamps here. They're he made me 3 of them, and he sent me a few more in kit form with a bunch of hardware to put them all together. I haven't done that yet. It's been like 6 months at least since he sent these to me. My apologies, Steve. That's just the way it goes. Until I'm ready to use the thing, I don't have time to mess around with them. But I will, and I'm going to use them on this particular project. So anyhow, it's a pretty cool little mechanism. It's been around a while. So you get you don't get a huge range of motion in these, but for clinker building, it's like just enough. So they're nice and light and they're fast to employ. Now, the last time I did a clinker boat, which is last year, last winter, I did a clinker class at my local maritime center. And so, yeah, we had a bunch of clamps much like this that I found quite useful. And of course, the other variation on them is that there's just a threaded screw here with a, you know, your regular old little windy handle. And I liked those too. I like the positive nature of that style because you can kind of dial it in and you can get quite a bit of pressure. But the sort of the speed you get with a quick cam like this is also really nice too. So, you know, everybody jokes that you can't have too many clamps, and that is true. I think it's valuable to have a wide variety of clamps. And I'll tell you, the thing that I have, if there's any kind of clamp that I find myself wishing I had more of, it's smaller clamps. So your Bessie F-body clamps, I think, are kind of one of the most versatile around in terms of large capacity, positive holding, and they can tend to hold on to weird shapes pretty good. And I often wish I had more of this smaller 6-inch size. I've got, you know, a bunch of them in the, you know, 8 and 12-inch range. Not a ton, but, well, different brand. Yeah, actually I do have quite a few in that sort of range. But and I was working on, at one of my Patreon supporters, working on one of his boats. He lives locally, and I went to go use some clamps in his shop, and everything he had was like 3-foot long bars on them, and I could tell what he was thinking. If I'm going to buy a clamp, I might as well buy one that is like I can do everything with. And it is so awkward having a clamp that's too big compared to having ones that are just the right size, that it's really worthwhile to start building up your collection of smaller ones. Now, it depends on the work you're doing, but when I'm doing a lot of glue ups, laminations and stuff, it's like this smaller size, just big enough to fit over, you know, a lamination that's, say, a couple inches thick, and then a mold that's maybe 3 inches deep or something like that. If that's the size that I want, you can get more clamps onto that lamination, as you might have seen in my last Catalina Wary video where I did laminated knees. The more clamps that I have like that, the better. So of those, you certainly can't have too many, I think. But they do cost, you know. It's not something you run out and buy tons of at once, but I make a point of, you know, when I'm at my tool store has a sale on and I happen to be there, I always pick up 2. Never pick up 1, always pick up 2. And eventually you build up the pile. Well, I think that's about all I wanted to jaw-wag about today. So let me just see if any of you who are still watching, there's a couple of dozen of you, have questions. Please, fire away. Questions? Come on, spit it out. I know you got something to say. There are no dumb questions. I could provide dumb answers to dumb questions. No? All right. In that case, I'm going to sign off. Got some Christmas shopping to do, and my best friend Paul, it's his retirement party today. He's finally cut the cord. He worked for the Google for a whole bunch of years, and then moved on to NVIDIA. Anyway, tech guy. He's able to retire at like 54, which is pretty darn nice. So anyway, we're gonna go and mess around over at his place. If you've seen me do any videos, especially on Instagram, where I'm doing machining, you see me using milling machines and stuff, that's over at his place. That's where we keep the metalworking stuff. So he's got his big mill and his big lathe, and I've got my combo mill lathe over there too, because there's just no room for it in the shop, unfortunately. All right, I'm gonna sign off. Matt, see you later. Bob, see you later. I don't know who else of you is still around, but it's been a slice. So no video tomorrow. It was a crazy week, and I did not get a video done, but it is in the works. It's sort of 75% there. We'll be back with it next week, I guess, the next Catalina Wary video. And we will be, as I find time, putting together some short videos related to the Fisgard Skiff. It will not be a full, my lights are always right over my head here. It will not be a full build series. I'm not trying to shoot that much video of it. I'm trying to just put together little pieces that have general applicability. So you've already seen one a couple weeks ago. I did just the basic scarf that from this project. I've got a hooked scarf, one that I plan to put out, and I think I've got one for doing chines, and maybe a little bit about that plank and stuff that we've already covered off here today. But in a nutshell, I'm trying to put together little short 10-minute contained videos related to some of those basic techniques that have broad applicability. Because I know the Catalina Wary videos, the series videos are long. It's because it takes a long time to build a boat. I want to try and give you a whole process of some bit, but you know, it's hard to even squeeze those down into a half hour of it, but that's just the way it goes. All right. Until the next live thingy. Do you like these live videos, or do you prefer the sort of the vloggy ones that are a little more edited? I don't know. Let me know. Comments. All right? Merry Christmas. Happy holidays. Whatever you got going. Take care. Love somebody. Ciao for now.